Clemson fans don't like to hear that word Georgia much. They took their national championship and beat them in week 1, and now we got another situation going on concerning Mike Reed. So we got Jason Priester on the line from allclemson.com on SI, so join him right there for all his work. Hey, Jason.
How's it going, man?
I'm doing well. How's it going?
I'm doing well myself.
Right. So Mike Reed, cornerbacks coach, what's the deal with him? Is he interviewing with Georgia, or what do we know about this?
Yeah, there was some talk, late last week that Georgia was, they need a defensive backs coach. Their coach is going to Miami. There was some reports last week coming out that Mike Reed was interviewing with Georgia or had interviewed with Georgia. And, I reached out to some people, and everybody I talked to said that just did not happen, that it never even got that far, that all that really happened was there was a phone that, there was, I don't even know if it was a phone call, but Georgia reached out to see if he might have interest. They've done that in the past. It's not the first time they've gauged his interest in the job there. And he said no, and that was the end of it. I've been told Alabama made a run, I shouldn't say make a run, but gauged his interest in coming there. So did Brent Venables after he got to Oklahoma. All wanted him to come be the corners coach or defensive backs coach there, and he's got no interest in leaving to make a lateral move. If Mike Reed ever leaves Clemson, it's going to be for a step up to be a defensive coordinator somewhere. And we saw he got a pay bump last month when Dabo Swinney got his coaching staff settled. And then he got another one last week. He got another $50,000 a year bump last week, and was given the title of assistant head coach. I'm sure that ties into all the interest in him. But from everything I can gather, he's not going anywhere. He did not interview with Georgia, not formally interview, and he's not going anywhere. Not for a lateral move, anyways.
How long has Mike Reed been on the staff?
I think he came after the 2011 season.
Okay.
Came over from North Carolina State. I want to say Clemson's had 9 defensive backs drafted since he's been with the program. He's a very, very well respected coach. One of the best recruiters on the staff. Probably might be one of the top 1 or 2 recruiters on the staff now that Venables is gone. But there's no doubt losing him would have hurt. Losing him would hurt, especially if you lose him in the same year that you lose Venables and Bates and Tony Elliott. So that is something Clemson, I'm sure, is glad they're avoiding at this point.
Yeah, as soon as you mentioned that Georgia and Alabama are contacting him, that's all you need to say for an assistant coach. There you go. So by all accounts, Mike Reed staying at Clemson as far as we know from Jason Priester. Good stuff right here. Please like the video, share these videos out on social media, subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. We want to get everyone set up for Clemson position by position as we head towards spring practice coming up in about a month. We got Jason here to run through the offense. Let's go to quarterback. So it's a tough situation when for the past 6 or 7 years, you're used to getting 35 touchdown passes out of your quarterback, and suddenly it's 9. So DJ Uiagalelei showed us against Notre Dame and Boston College the previous season that, and I got to count myself in this group, that I just kind of assumed he was going to step in and be one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and that wasn't necessarily the case. So we got DJ, and we got whether there's going to be a quarterback battle or not.
Yeah, I think pretty much everyone assumed he was going to kind of just step in and be one of the better quarterbacks in the country and keep that offense rolling at a high level. For whatever reason, it did not happen, and it started right out the gate in week 1. This will be one of the most discussed topics heading into the spring amongst the fan base. Is who is the quarterback going to be to begin the season, or how long can DJ hold on to the job, et cetera, et cetera. Personally, I'm be interested to see if DJ's even 100% healthy by spring. Last time we heard from Brandon Streeter back on signing day, he still wasn't even fully recovered from his knee. Wouldn't surprise me. Clemson's kind of tight-lipped on these things. They don't put out a lot about injuries. Wouldn't surprise me if he had to have a surgical procedure done on that knee or at least on that index finger. From my understanding, he has some tore tendons in that thing on his throwing hand, but I'm not even 100% sure he's going to be 100% healthy by spring, but definitely a battle to watch. I don't think there is, even if he's 100%, I don't think there is any chance that Cade Klubnik comes out of the spring as the starting quarterback at Clemson or listed atop the depth chart. I don't think there's any chance that happens. Dabo Swinney's made it pretty clear on multiple occasions for his incumbent to get beat out. It can't be close. It's going to have to be I think Dabo Swinney said it like this himself. It's got to be a knockout punch. If you're going to take the incumbent out, you got to knock him out. And I don't think that can happen in the spring. I'm not even sure it can happen in fall camp. This is something that might go into the season. And I fully expect DJ to be the starting quarterback in game 1 against Georgia Tech. Now, whether he's the starting quarterback 4 weeks later, I have no idea. If he plays at the level he played last year, I don't see any way, shape, or form that he can hold on to that job, or at least Klubnik isn't given an opportunity. Clemson didn't have really very many options at quarterback last year. DJ was really it. They're going to have another option this year. They've even got, Hunter Johnson, a 6-year guy, sitting back there kind of waiting in the wings. Didn't really come to Clemson to play. Was mostly interested in coming and being a graduate assistant, doing some coaching. Brings a lot of experience into that room. So that's even another guy that's could get an opportunity, say, if for whatever reason Klubnik's not ready. I'm of the opinion he's going to need some weight before he's ready. He's coming in about 185 pounds. That certainly isn't ideal for a starting quarterback at the Power 5 level. But that's going, like I said, that's going to be the most talked about subject throughout the spring, after spring, all summer is Klubnik and Uiagalelei, who's going to be the quarterback. If there's a change, when the change is going to happen. No one knows the answer to that.
Jason, it kind of strikes me odd that a guy that was a 5-star quarterback 4 years ago, and he certainly didn't have anywhere close to the career that was projected for him, but he still was able to gain the starting job at Northwestern for a time, and he's played, and he hasn't been miserable, that he would give up on his career that quickly.
I thought it was a little bit odd too. He's using his COVID year as his eligibility year this year. I mean, maybe he thought, this is just me speculating. I haven't heard anything about this. He wants to get into coaching from what I'm understanding, but maybe he thought he wasn't going to get an opportunity to play anywhere else. Maybe he just assumed that. I don't know. I'm just grasping at straws here, but I thought that was a little odd too, that he wasn't looking around to play somewhere. Dabo Swinney has said it on multiple occasions that he was coming back to Clemson to get his MBA. I can't remember what it's in, but and that was the biggest thing. He was coming back to get his MBA, something offered there. But yeah, reaching out to wanting to coach and not asking about playing, that struck me as a little odd too.
Breaking down Clemson football right here at the Voice of College Football, getting you set for spring practice, going position by position with Jason Priester from allclemson.com on SI. So, of course, you get a slice of Jason's analysis right here, but you got to take the deep dive. Go to allclemson.com on SI. All right, the running back room looks to be pretty well set up for a big year if they can get some blocking up front, and we'll get to that in just a second. Will Shipley's a gamer. He impressed me, certainly turned out to be, especially for a freshman, a more physical back than I expected. Ran for 11 touchdowns, 5 yards per carry. Kobe Pace was the guy out of the gate and ran for 6.2 yards per carry and six touchdowns. But then you also have Phil Maffa, a guy that you really liked out of high school, and he got some touches as well. So how do you set up the running back room?
Yeah, Shipley, I'm like you. I never imagined he would be the physical back that he developed, that he ended up being as a freshman, especially not in his first year. But he ended up being everything that those coaches raved about all spring and fall. And he's gonna be the guy at the top of the depth chart that he was by the midpoint of the season. But I think I asked Dabo Sweeney about the running backs on signing day, and he's looking at it like he's got a three-headed monster back there. They got three very good running backs in Shipley and Pace and Maffa, and they all can do different things. But that's a really good running back room. The only question, Clemson likes to carry 5. They've only got 4. Dabo Sweeney didn't seem too concerned about the depth, but he did say they got to stay healthy. But they've got the backs. It's like you said, they got to get the blocking. I think Shipley and Pace and Moffa are all going to get their fair share of touches. I'm not sure there'll be one featured guy every game. They might decide to go with the hot hand, rotate a couple series. I'm not sure exactly how it'll work out, but I expect to see a lot of all 3 of those guys.
For me, the game in particular that I remember that Shipley won me over, I think, was the Florida State game where they were playing tough run defense. He wasn't getting a whole lot of blocking. He was getting just enough of a push to do something, but they just kept handing it to him in a tight game, and he just kept grinding out the yards and moving people and moving the sticks. So, yeah, the running back situation looks to be in good hands. Is there any type of wild cards out there, whether they be from previous classes or for this incoming 22 class, that could be a factor?
At running back?
At running back.
It's just those 3 guys and incoming freshman Keith Adams Jr. I'm not even a whole lot familiar with Adams, but as the 4th guy, I don't see any way in which he redshirts. I expect he's going to play. He's going to have to kind of learn on the fly, learn on the job. How much of a wild card he is, I don't know. He played his last season out in Utah. I just haven't seen a lot of him. I watched a little bit of his film. He's got a little pop in him, but it's just hard to say. The way Dabo Sweeney described him was he scores touchdowns. That's what he said. But I expect, especially if Clemson can get that offense back to the way it was in previous years, and they're not playing in tight games the way they were last year against teams that aren't as good as them. Up until last season, Clemson was blowing everybody's doors off in the ACC, and they were playing all these different guys. And when you're getting in games where you're up 20 points, you don't want to have to rely on Shipley and Maffa and Pace to carry the load at running back. You don't want to get those guys hurt in trash time. So that, to me, that's where Adams will come into play. If Clemson gets big leads and something, we're going to see a lot of him then. But as far as a wild card, I'm not sure I'd call him that.
Talking up the Tigers, Clemson Tigers, here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. Please like the video. Share these videos out on social media. Send them out there where people don't know that we're talking college football with you each and every day. And, of course, like the video. And, again, subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. Check out Jason's work, allclemson.com on SI. Wide receiver, I make this comment all the time. It's arguably been the best position in college football over the last 7, 8 to 10 years, close to it, but over the last couple of years, not so much. So Justin Ross, he had a great start to his career, decent finish, 46 catches, 3 touchdowns, but not necessarily anything close to what he had done. But obviously he was coming off a huge injury. And Frank Ladson, who never fulfilled his potential, moves on to Miami. So set us up at wide receiver entering the spring.
Yeah, I'll start off by saying the wide receivers have got to be much better than what they were last year. For as unproductive as what they got from the quarterback position, the wide receivers did not help him out a whole lot. They weren't able to create a lot of separation. There were a ton of drops. I mean, it's just got to be better. The blocking on the perimeter's got to be better. there was a time not so very long ago that the Clemson receivers would take pride in their blocking on the outside. And that was something I didn't see a lot of last year. I don't want, I don't want to question the effort because I think the effort was there, but at times it just kind of looked like some guys were lost. I know injuries played a huge part, but even early on in the season before the injuries really started settling in, Clemson was not getting much out of those receivers. They were not getting anywhere close to what they thought they were going to get. But you know, heading into the spring with Justin Ross gone, this is going to be a big year for Joseph Ngata. He's another guy he's a guy that, like Ladson, has had trouble staying healthy. And when he was healthy for the first part of last season, you know, we saw flashes of his potential. His average yards per reception were up there. I think they led the team, but it was over 15 yards per catch, if I'm not mistaken. So he's got big
19.
play potential. 18, yeah, he's got
19.
big play.
Yeah.
He's got big play potential, no doubt about it. He's just got to stay healthy. And then the guys behind him, well, not behind him necessarily, but you know, EJ Williams is another guy who I thought was going to have a big year last year. You know, got hurt, a couple of different injuries for him. Had an injury to one of his hands, I think one of his fingers maybe, that he dealt with all season long. Then he injured his knee. This is a big year for him. Junior season. He's now one of the veterans of that group. They'll be looking for him to step up. Let me pull up the roster. I want to make sure I don't forget anybody on that, because there's so, when you start talking about receivers, there's so many of them. But
a Jew for sure.
Azu transferred out with Ladson.
Did he?
Yeah.
I missed that.
Sure did. He is heading down to South Florida, down there with Jeff Scott. The way last season played out for him, that really didn't surprise me a whole lot. The further we got into the season, the less we saw of him. I think he's a guy that just needs to be on the field to get some experience and learn, and he's not going to be able to do that at Clemson. It's just too many, you know, good players on the roster, too much talent in front of him. But, you know, other guys that'll step up, that need to step up next season. I shouldn't say step up with this guy because he stepped up last season. Bo Collins was a freshman, had a big second half for Clemson. Dakari Collins is another guy I like. I think those are really going to be four guys right there that we see a lot of next year. And a guy that doesn't get talked about a lot is Brandon Spector. Didn't play any last year due to some COVID-related issues. And Clemson missed having a true slot receiver on the field last year. I don't know that Spector would have been a starter if he was started some and not other games, or how that would have played out. But I thought Spector was going to be a guy that was going to be on the field a lot last year. I know Dabo Swinney was high on him coming out of spring. Last year they thought that he had taken a big step in his development. He's going into his fourth year, I think, now. And Clemson needs those smaller, twitchier guys on the field, because last year it was all those big, long, rangy guys. Even in the slot, you had Justin Ross and Bo Collins played in the slot some. And there's Troy Stelato's another guy who I think can take a big jump from. He was a freshman last year, red-shirted, didn't enroll early, got injured in fall camp, fell behind, spent most of the season on this, in power hour, and then he got hurt again late in the season. But he's another one of those smaller, twitchier guys. You know, he can play inside or outside, but he's more of just a slot receiver. And to me, that's where Clemson needs to get more production, is in that slot next year. They need those smaller, twitchier guys to step up. And then you got the two freshmen, Adam Randall and Antonio Williams. You asked me about a wild card with the running backs. I think Randall's a guy that can be a wild card with the receivers. If he comes in and he doesn't, and he doesn't fall behind or whatever, and he can stay on pace, I think that's a guy that we could see a lot of on the field next season. I'd say the same thing about Antonio Williams too, but he's not rolling early. Kind of puts him behind the 8 ball out of the gate. But he's another guy that I thought Antonio Williams was one of the more impressive receivers. I went and watched him live last season, and he's going to be really good for this team. I don't know how much it'll translate to his freshman season, but he's going to be really good in the future.
Bo Collins caught 31, 3 touchdowns. Dakari Collins with 16 catches last year in 2021. Talking up Clemson football right here at the Voice of College Football. Got Jason Priester on the line from allclemson.com. Please like the video and subscribe right here. Tight end's been talked about for the last few off seasons, that there would be an emphasis on the tight end, getting the tight end back in play in the passing game, and it just hasn't happened for a while, that there's been a big impact tight end.
Yeah, it sure hasn't. Really since 2016 when Jordan Leggett left, Clemson's kind of still been waiting on that next guy to come in and give them Leggett-like production at that position. It just hasn't happened. I personally thought we might see it last year with Galloway, Braden Galloway, and Davis Allen kind of combining to maybe give the offense that kind of production. But Galloway, he got hurt fairly early in the season and was out the rest of the season. And before he even got hurt, he was struggling with drops, and he just, for whatever reason, just kind of never lived up to the billing that he got from some of the coaches. And Davis Allen kind of struggled a little bit with drops early himself, but he kind of settled in and had a nice season over the second half of the season. But Clemson does have a young tight end, I think he's 6'5". After being in the weight room for a season, he really started to get on the field more at the end of the year last year. But after he's been in the weight room now for a full year, his name's Jake Brenningstool. I think I'm not saying he's going to come out and take Davis Allen's job by any stretch of the imagination, but I think he's going to be on the field a lot. I think he can eventually become a big part of the offense. He's that big target that Clemson's kind of not had at tight end. Well, they've kind of had him, but those guys just haven't produced for whatever reason. But some thought he was the number one high school coming out of the country in his recruiting class, and they are really high on this kid, and they are expecting him to take a big jump this season. They've also got Sage Enos. Not really. He's more of your blocking kind of tight end. He can give you a little bit in the passing game, but he's not a guy that's going to stretch the field for you by any stretch of the imagination. But we'll see some of him too. I think those are the three guys that will be on the field most of the season next season. But I think it'll be a Davis Allen and Jake Brenningstool show.
All right. Give me just a second. We are running down the Clemson offense position by position right here at the Voice of College Football. And the way we can do it is bring in Jason Priester from allclemson.com on SI. So check out his work right there. All right, Jason, offensive line, it's got to get better. And it's reasonable to think, based on who they've got coming back, don't lose a lot, that this could be a jump for the offensive line.
Yeah, it's got to be. They've got to take a big jump. Like you just said, it's got to be better. Many of us were expecting it to be better last year, and it just wasn't. They really struggled with injuries. Really, never really had when Matt Bockhorst come out of fall camp and was named the starting center. It didn't at the time, but it should have thrown up a red flag for me, and it didn't. Those first few games of the season when he was at center, interior of that line really struggled. Another group that also struggled with injuries. But once they got Mason Trotter started the season hurt. Once he got back on the field and started playing, and once Hunter Rayburn started playing, once those two guys got in at center and started playing, and Bockhorst moved back over to guard, we started to see that line gel a little bit over the back few games of the season. There was a lot more consistency with the starting lineup. Over the first 9 games, Clemson started 6. There were 6 different starting lineups at offensive linemen. at offensive line. And that's just, that's just not a way to have a lot of success when you're having those kind of injuries. But they pretty much get everybody back except for Bockhorst next season. You got Jordan McFadden over at left tackle. He's good, veteran guy, probably one of the better tackles in the ACC. You got Will Putnam over at right tackle, former blue chip guy. He's going into his third year. This will be his second year starting. You'll have Will Putnam at right guard. Sometimes I want to say he's at left guard, but he's at right guard. This will be his second year, or no, this will be his third year. He's going into his senior year now, if I'm not mistaken, but his third year starting. And I thought Putnam struggled some at the beginning of the season, but really settled in and really played well down the stretch last year. And over at left guard, you had Marcus Tate, who was a freshman last season. He got thrown into the fire against Georgia, won the starting job coming out of fall camp, and really struggled in those first couple games. Lost the job for a week or so, then was inserted back into the starting lineup, and he really started playing better, the more he got on the field. The biggest question for me is what Clemson's going to do at center next year. They get Rayburn and Trotters both back, but we've all seen the reports and know that Clemson's been kind of looking for an interior offensive lineman to come in, a graduate transfer to come in and start at center next year and kind of be that stopgap until Ryan Linthicum is ready. He's a rising sophomore. He was the number one center in the country in his recruiting class coming out of high school. But Clemson hasn't started a freshman or sophomore center, true freshman or true sophomore center in a long time. They tend to like those guys that have more experience. And Linthicum was not ready next year, so they're kind of looking for a guy to serve as a stopgap next season while Linthicum continues to develop. If they can find that guy, this can be a pretty good offensive line. The talent's there, and there won't be. There's also a coaching change we need to throw in there. Thomas Austin's taking over for Robbie Caldwell, who's moving into an administrative position. Austin's been there a couple of seasons, at least once. I can't remember if he's been there one or two seasons now, but he was there at least one season, kind of getting his feet wet. He's a coach at Georgia Southern or either Georgia State before he came back to Clemson. He was a former offensive lineman at Clemson, but this is – he's kind of in a, I don't want to call it a bad position. Let's just say, I don't know the right term to use, but as high as the expectations were for that offensive line last season, and they failed to live up to them. Now you got and a lot of that was put on Robbie Caldwell by the fan base. There was a lot of fans that were not sad to see him, retire from his on-field spot. So Austin stepping in, and his feet's going to be put to the fire, which I think he can step up and get the job done. I think he's going to be a heck of an offensive line coach. The kids kind of seem to really respond to him. Big season for Clemson's offensive line next year, no doubt about it. They got the talent in that room, and we kind of been waiting to see it translate onto the field for 2 years now. This is be year 3 is kind of put up or shut up time.
Offensive linemen typically need more development, both physically to be ready for the college game and just in terms of learning the position because of the combinations and the chemistry that's needed along the offensive line. And it sounds like you've listed enough guys in the rotation that we don't need to expect that Colin Sadler or Blake Miller in the 22 class would be needed.
I think both of those guys, I wouldn't be shocked to see either of those guys on the 2 deep. I think both of those guys could come in. I mean, after seeing them up close, late last year, those guys both look ready to play as freshmen physically. And that's not saying they are mentally, but I think both of those guys have the potential to make the 2 deep. Not saying they will, but there's also other guys. Like there's a former 5-star who redshirted last year, Tristan Lee. who's kind of biding his time. There, you got Paul. Well, no, you don't got him. He transferred. I was about to say you got Paul Teo, but he transferred to. I was thinking of Dietrich Pennington. You got Dietrich Pennington, who was a freshman last year and got injured. They're really high on him. This is a big guy. He's an interior guy, going to play guard for Clemson. I think he's going to be on the 2 deep this year. But yeah, it would not shock me in any way to see either of those freshmen on the 2 deep. Miller, Sadler, both, I think they got very high ceilings, both former 4-star guys, and with lots of potential.
Breaking down Clemson's offensive line with Jason Priester from allclemson.com. We're going position by position. We will run down the defense, and please check out all the videos as we take you up to spring practice at Clemson. Jason, we always appreciate the time. Appreciate you stopping by and breaking things down for us.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you having me on, man.